Well, the Albanese government continues to duck and weave about what it did or didn't do to assist ISIS brides coming to Australia. That they obfuscate on something so obviously important to the safety of Australians beggars belief. And speaking of their inability to just speak plainly on this subject, have a listen to Industry Minister Tim Ayres this morning when asked about how he felt regarding people who went overseas to support a terrorist organisation that beheaded Christians now coming back to Australia.
These people have travelled to a war zone, and you know, it's a pretty you know, I think most Australians would regard that as a problem for like a behaviour that is. That's not certainly the government's advice to people has been do not travel to these areas.
Wow. Joining me now is Nationals MP Barnaby Joyce. Barnaby, should Australians trust the Albanese government to keep them safe?
Well, that Tim Ayres sounded like a mad goat on ice skates. He was all over the shop. And, of course, we are really concerned because these people have been indoctrinated. Let's just dispel the idea that because you're female, you can't be part of some of the most evil things that have been perpetrated on other human beings by ISIS. We have seen some of the literature, some of the quotes from these people, and they were full-on part of this show. In my area, we have... I fought for, didn't fight for, I lobbied for the Yazidi community to come into the New England. And you should have a quiet yarn to them about how ISIS treated them, raping them, murdering them, enslaving them in prostitution, killing their children in front of them as they kill their husbands. This is the cult that these people decide to be a part of. And one of the greatest treasures, one of the greatest prizes in your life is to be part of this nation, Australia. And we don't just flippantly give it out to people who were a party to a murderous, insatiable, evil group, which ISIS was.
Absolutely. All right, a New South Wales court has ruled against the pro-Palestine march to Sydney Opera House planned for Sunday. Barnaby, this is a victory for common sense, which is pretty rare these days, but a victory nonetheless.
I hate to say it, big tick also to Premier Chris Minns. People just looked at this and said, no, this is idiotic. First of all, we've got a peace agreement. Surely that must mean something. So what was this about? It was just the adjunct provocateurs, people basically on the bandwagon to push their barrow, which is generally against the establishment. It would have been infiltrated and participated in by people with Taliban support, Taliban supporting banners, ISIS supporting banners, Iranian Revolutionary Guard, Hamas, terrorist organisations, basically frequenting one of the icons of our nation. We don't want our icon of our nation desecrated with people, once more, who are party to some of the most evil things perpetrated by one human being against another. And that's precisely what would have happened. You've got to draw a line, and I want to thank those on either side, both sides of the political fence, who said enough is enough. Let's stop this.
Now, of course, there will be a march. It will be via a different route that will avoid the Opera House. How likely, though, do you think that some protesters will go to the Opera House anyway? I know New South Wales Police have said they will be stationed there to deal with anyone who does so.
I'll put $100 and they'll try and get there, because that's how they're going to get media, you know, and they'll be searching for media oxygen in their wayward cause. You know, they want to be rah-rah, the Uber left, and this is the pony that they ride on. It's later on they'll get another pony. This is the pony they're riding on at the moment, and they're going to try and ride that pony right to the forecourt of the Opera House, and if they could, they'll ride that pony across the Harbour Bridge and back. But I'm hoping that people sit back and say, OK, we have a peace agreement which is supported by all the Arab states, OK? It's obviously even supported, and I don't condone them, it must be supported in some way or shape by Hamas, for goodness sake. So what are you protesting about? what's this about? It's your evil angel, President Trump, has actually facilitated peace. I hope you've got a big thank you note. Thank you, President Trump. 100%. Good on you. Well done. Let's see if they've got a banner that says that.
Yeah, I don't like our chances, Barnaby, at all, no matter how much money you want to bet on that particular outcome. I want to ask you about comments from former Prime Minister Scott Morrison. He says a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would come at, quote, a terrible cost for the world. In a speech to a Taiwanese defence think tank, Scott Morrison said failing to defend Taiwan would be appeasement, and he's urged the West to ramp up defence spending and fast. Now, I want to ask you about this because you have warned about China's ambitions before. Do you agree with Scott Morrison that the West has lost its nerve when it comes to China and we're already in appeasement mode?
Well, to be quite frank, I remember being told by Scott Morrison that I had to tone down my rhetoric about the concerns I had about China. I've been saying for like a decade or more, we have to become as powerful as possible, as quickly as possible, because with the advent of a totalitarian regime, it's not the Chinese people, a totalitarian regime with a unitary control that paraded some of the most ferocious weapons the other day. Those weapons weren't for Russia or they weren't for Afghanistan or that's a message to us of what's coming our way if we want to play hardball against a totalitarian regime. And of course, if you don't stand up to them, they walk over you. That's how totalitarian regimes work. So we have to become as powerful as possible, as quickly as possible. And let's just have a little brief look at how we're going. We've got 6 submarines that sometimes all of them are inoperable. We're having to ask Papua New Guinea to supply us soldiers because we don't have enough. We've got 2 sealed roads across our nation, not really good if you've got to move ordnances and materials across the nation. Only 2, 1 railway line. We have basically frigates that are out of date. We weren't able to, in our surveillance capacity, we weren't even able to tell that a Chinese flotilla was firing weapons to practice, obviously, for an attack on Australia off in the sea adjacent to Sydney. We're not going real well here. And of course, right now, we're still sort of thinking, oh, the world will leave us behind. If if the communist China decides to take out Taiwanese, the Chinese and Taiwanese, then the most affected is us, Australia, because this is in our backyard. To be quite frank, the United States of America is not going to be overly affected by China, but we will. And let's just go through 3 possible things that could happen as China became a hegemony in our area, what they would enforce on us. First of all, I would suggest that I would say there would be no control on immigration. If you want to go immigrate from China to Australia, you can. And just remember that parade, that military parade, if you decide to argue against us. There'll be no controls on Chinese foreign investment. We will buy what we want, where we want, when we want. And if you don't like that idea, just remember that military parade in Beijing and what we can do. And third thing, big one, from now on, we don't trade in US dollars. You trade in RMB, in Chinese yuan. And therefore, China will have the value of everything in your nation. You will no longer be rich in US dollars. You'll be whatever value China determines they want you to value at.
Well, the stakes are certainly very high. Let's hope the Albanese government takes heed of Scott Morrison's warnings and indeed yours, although I'm not sure I'd put money on that one either, Barnaby. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.